I think you've never...
I didn't do anything! Tase me, bro! Don't tase me! I didn't do anything! Ow! 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 Sit? Can I sit? You don't... Anybody want to follow along? Just come with us. Make sure they don't kill me.
Who really runs the show?
These 300 men still run the world today with an iron fist. Their wealth is untold, cannot be measured. I know I looked at some of the records that I could find in Italy, in Rome, and I came across the families in Italy who were called the Fondi, meaning the people who had all the money. They were all members of the Committee of 300, the Lucatis, the Recanatis, the Volpi du Miseratis. These people are so wealthy that they would make David Rockefeller look like a piker. That is how rich they are. And this is the committee that runs the world. Now, in my book, The Committee of 300, I name every one of them.
The Bilderberg Group is a broad cross-section of leading citizens assembled for nearly 3 days of informal and off-the-record discussions about topics of current concern, especially in the fields of foreign affairs and the international economy. They are incrementally implementing the Agenda 21 plan worldwide. In 1945, they created the UN. That only after another planned shocking world massacre called World War II and the Holocaust.
On a day in April 1945, the townspeople of Gardelegen, Germany, carried 1,100 crosses to a local barn. The crosses were for 1,100 fresh graves, the victims of Gardelegen. But these 1,100 were a small fraction of the 20 million men, women, and children murdered by the Nazis. 20 million human beings, equal to the population of 22 American states. 20 million corpses, the product of 300 concentration camps all over Germany and in occupied territories. These are the foul, wretched remnants of human beings like you and me. Not all died slowly and horribly by starvation. Millions died quickly and horribly by burning in the furnaces of Poland. This is what is left of their agony, a handful of ash to swirl into oblivion on a puff of wind. Here's the Folterkammer torture chamber in Maidanek. It is a lasting monument to German scientific genius. Gas chambers were the principal agent of death, and their use was admirably organized. Prisoners were told to prepare themselves for a shower bath. They were even given towels to make them believe this story. But when the doors of the bathroom were closed behind them, poison gas, Zyklon, was released through the shower ducts.
These grounds. I used to play here as a boy.
The cemetery?
Oh, there was no cemetery then. We'd have picnics, weddings, play games. It was a beautiful park. Before.
Before?
Read the dates.
October 1946. October 1946, they're the same.
They all are. I never found out who it was or why. They rushed in. Shots were fired. My mother pushed me to the floor. I hid under the pews for dear life. It seemed to go on and on for an eternity. Eventually, I came out. I was the only one left. Everyone was dead.
The news is carried to Hitler, who received this word of a great nation's fall in a characteristic manner. Also characteristic were his terms for the armistice. It must be signed in the coach where Marshal Foch met the defeated Germans in the last war. The French delegation arrived to pay the final price of French disunity and the treachery of some of its leaders. The final price, a price that for centuries to come, the French won't forget. More than 3/5 of their country was to be blacked out by a military occupation. The remainder was to be controlled by a French government acceptable to Hitler. A tax of 400 million francs a day was to be imposed on the French people to support the German army of occupation. Nearly 2 million French prisoners of war were to be taken into Germany and kept there as hostages, to work as slaves or rot of hunger, tuberculosis, or other diseases in concentration camps. Men deliberately and permanently separated from their families in order to decrease the French birth rate and thus eliminate France as a world power in future generations. French civilians, men, women, and children, must slave on farm or in factory for the Nazi master race or starve. There will be a class of subject alien races. We need not hesitate to call them slaves. French children were to grow up on such inadequate food that many would reach the age of 12 before they grew new teeth. And for any attempts to protest against these restrictions, thousands of innocent French civilians would be executed. This was the price the French were to pay as they signed the armistice. And the master of the master race must go to Paris to tour the streets of what was once the city of light. You notice no cheering crowds here to welcome in the new order. When the people of Paris come to the streets again, it is to hear the voice of dictators, telling them what they must do, how they must live, what they must say, what they must think, telling them how to be slaves. Gone is the Republic of France. Gone is free speech and a free representative government. Gone is liberty, equality, fraternity. These are the French. With their ears they listen, but their minds and their hearts, these are down on the Mediterranean where the battle colors of the regiments are being taken to Africa, out of the Nazi grasp. The people weep as their glory departs, for they don't as yet know that France has hope, a rallying point.
The UN was created, but unwanted wars and killings never stopped.
I want to tell you that we do not belong to the United Nations. One of the greatest constitutional scholars it was ever my great pleasure to speak with was the late Senator Sam Ervin, who told me there's no way under the noonday sun that we could ever have joined in the United Nations. We did not join the United Nations, and we do not belong to it now. I've written a little work called Is the United States a Member of the United Nations? And you'll find in there I give you chapter and verse constitutionally why we cannot be.
The USA was warned in 1961 by its own president, and the president after him, John F. Kennedy, was murdered. The first major psychological strike on Americans.
We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
The mainstream media says, remember, there is no elephant.
The question has been asked many times how the people who are perpetrating these things expect to do this and make it last when you have a nation of people who were raised and educated on individual rights and the Constitution and so forth. The answer to that is that you steal a generation of children and you indoctrinate them so that they accept these ideas and they become global citizens in the coming global village. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here this afternoon. Michael Chapman is an educational researcher and an author. He is also a member of the board of the Maple River Education Coalition and founder of the American Heritage Research. Through research and study, the Maple River Coalition is finding a direct link between the restructuring of our schools through federal programs like Goals 2000 and School to Work, and the restructuring of our communities through sustainable development. Michael Chapman and his group have discovered that today, as revealed in the national curriculum standards, education is no longer about preparing our children to maintain true liberty in a sovereign America. Instead, it is about indoctrinating our children to accept citizenship in a future global village.
You can see this through the final subject to fall by the national standards is education. This is our new math in Minnesota called Connected Mathematics. Based on the National Center of Teachers of Mathematics, Standard 3 tells us that students learn that mathematics is man-made, that it is arbitrary, and good solutions are arrived at by consensus. No lie. There is no truth, not even in math. Most of us assume 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. You're wrong. We might reach a new consensus. Consensus is the theme that is more important in math than math. Now keep in mind, this is based on a shift in worldview. Mathematics was not a self-existing truth discovered by man and the secrets of it unlocked. It was a social construction to meet society's need. This is the shift in thinking about all of our curriculum today. They're all based on the postmodern or constructivist approach. How well does it work? Well, they tell you in the teacher's guide in the back, it tells us that because the curriculum doesn't emphasize arithmetic computations done by hand, some students may not do as well on tests assessing computational skills. We believe such a trade-off in the favor of CMP is very much to the student's advantage in the world of work. You see, we don't want children who can think about the numbers behind the buttons. We simply want children to be prepared to know which buttons to push. That's why the new cash registers at the fast food have pictures on them, not numbers. Our children are mathematically illiterate on purpose. How do I know on purpose? Why isn't this just a basic bad idea? Because the Sustainable Development Plan tells us so. Generally, more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. Charlotte Iserby, I owe you an apology. I did not believe for the longest time it was a deliberate dumbing down. I thought the dumbing down was a natural consequence of a bad idea. Folks, it's deliberate. It's deliberate.